Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Jack's Business Talk. Today we have a very special guest, Joe. I'm sorry, I forget your last
Cacciapaglia.
Cacciapaglia. I made a mistake of looking at your name. I just like I'm not getting that.
Right. Now it's exactly like I said. If you look at it, it screws it up. It's like, the beginning's like Cacciatore and then silent G at the end, Paglia. So,
Yeah. So I want to have you on to try and learn a little bit more about you're calling it fractional investing, correct?
yeah, yeah, it's fractional real estate
Hmm.
investing, buying, and there's a lot of different ways to do it depending on what platform you're on, but buying little pieces of an interest in a investment property.
And you found a property in the Pittsburgh market. So um basically, if you want, and if you're okay with it, I'll go ahead and plug it down in the description. You can watch the video and, Joe's evaluation of it and why it may not be the best investment for you, but you do what's good for you and what you think is right. And we'll talk a little bit about why it may or may not be a good investment. But I just kind of wanted to learn a little bit more about how to do it. So one of the things I had a question on the video was
Okay.
if I get this pulled up, I backed up a little bit further just so I wasn't taking you out of context and you can kind of hear more what you're saying. Can you see that?
I can, yes.
Okay. Oh, you know what? I realized I didn't click the share sound, so it wasn't going to do us any good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there we go. Now you'll be able to hear yourself. So,
Looking at their um
can you hear it?
a little bit, their management agreement, and they have, let's see, is this the one? Yeah, they do direct bookings. They charge 14% for it, which is, as high as almost anything else.
So,
But
this document and stuff that you're looking at
that
here,
that
is
might
this all
explain why
on
AirDNA is not picking up all, 100.
is this all on the platform that you can just look at?
Yes, and so just to give a little background, this particular property is on a site called Lofty.ai.
Hmm.
That's probably half my videos are about properties on that platform, because I think it's sort of the most interesting as far as there's just a lot of pitfalls. I make really good returns on some of the deals, but there's a lot of them that just have a lot of problems. But they do, and sometimes like this one, I think has caught a lot of people off guard because on the surface it's sort of looked good. But I think that yeah, they provide like this management agreement. It's linked from the platform. They'll provide an appraisal of the property. You'll get a copy of the home inspection. Um, and then depending on the type of property and whatnot, you might get some other info. But and I always encourage people to look through all that. You get a copy of the LLC agreement because what you're actually buying is an interest in an LLC that is then broken up and traded as tokens with smart contracts, which I'm just parroting that. I don't really understand how it works. But so yeah, they give you all these due diligence documents, and then I use a lot of third party websites for some additional stuff, but yes, this came from them.
Okay. So that, and I can't remember why, but I wrote down a timestamp for something. So we'll just go shoot over there real quick.
Okay. This is the mortgage payment, not including taxes and insurance, right? This does not include taxes and insurance. This is just principal and interest that they're paying. This is what the math I was doing before, right? So we have
Oh, you know what?
$1,913.05.
I did write the question down, and we
Okay.
just answered that, so I guess we're good on that. Um, what do you think is the most easy for like beginners and stuff? Would do you think? Because I hear you talking, well, you and the people in the Discord talking about two or three or four different platforms. Do you think?
So if I'm talking to a pure, like somebody who's pretty new to real estate, also doesn't have any kind of crypto knowledge and doesn't want, because a lot of these are powered by like blockchain, and so some of the crypto users get into it from a sort of a different angle. But so if they have, you're relatively new to real estate but interested in investing in real estate, no real crypto background, um, I think Mogul is the most approachable site for someone like that. Um, what makes it a lot different from, so this property was on that you were talking about here is on Lofty. Lofty is a marketplace that anybody can bring a property to sell their equity on. Where Mogul is actually, you have a couple of guys that are Goldman Sachs trained finance and real estate guys that go out, pick those deals, bring them to the platform. And so every single deal on there is one that went through their due diligence and their, you know, um, analysis. And even with that, I still only buy probably one out of every or two out of every three that they bring to their platform. I'm pretty picky and risk averse, and still will do due diligence and not buy every single thing that they have. But that's definitely the most straightforward platform. Their average deal, I think, just is miles beyond the average deal on Lofty. But I make higher returns on Lofty because it is such an inefficient market. And so it's just sort of a basic economic principle that inefficient markets are, there's more opportunity to profit. And so that's why I think I spend most of my time there. If you have like good real estate understanding, you can look at the fundamentals of the properties. You can rule out 90% of the deals on there, and then but also identify ones that other people are missing sometimes where you might get a really good discount on one because people are missing where the value is. So yeah, I guess, and sorry, I always give really long answers to short questions because I'm used to just sitting here talking to my computer by myself. But I'd say, yeah, for someone that's a beginner, I think Mogul's probably the most straightforward. Um, and I think I've got 11 deals on there at this point. All of these are, I've been a real estate investor for 20 years, but I've only been investing in fractional real estate since I think September. So all of these sites are relatively new to me, although I've spent hours every day since then on all the ones I'm invested on because I think it's just a tremendous opportunity at the moment.
Mhm. Oh, by the way, in the video, you're doing the crime maps,
Yep.
and there was the one at or the one assault on the river, and you made the comment, oh, there probably isn't one there because that's on the river.
Right.
There actually was one.
Oh, was it in a boat or something?
Yeah, I was in a boat.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was like for one of the like holidays where all the boaters were out, and someone got mad and pushed someone over the side of the boat.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, and you can see like a lot of times when I'm doing these videos, I do, what I'm just referring to as a general due diligence video. I'm sort of trying to point you into the direction of these are all the things I'm looking at, but I only ever take like 30 to 45 minutes. So I'm not doing 100% of my due diligence while I'm doing the video, right? Like I usually have spent about an hour, maybe an hour and a half to prep for that. And
Hmm.
then if afterwards I think I'm going to invest in it, I spend quite a bit more time digging into, things that I might have questions about. Every once in a while, if something interesting comes up, I'll do a follow up and be like, "Oh, I found out these additional things." But yeah, I mean, because this was one that for me wasn't a good fit, I didn't dig into some of the outstanding questions that I had.
Yeah, so the things I watched a few of your videos, and you kind of more or less what I was starting to see a trend is when you're not or analyzing this, you're almost taking the same approach as what Dion does for when he buys a rental property in the aspect where you're looking at the city. Is it increasing in population, decreasing in population? Where's it at on the flood maps? The crime rate, the Google Street views, and you're kind of just working backwards and making sure that the numbers make sense. Is there? more to it, or
So that I mean that is so that's what I'm doing that I think is different from what most of the people, especially on Lofty, are doing. So if you go on Lofty and you look at this particular property, um, it will tell you it has fantastic returns. Like if you look at the percent return on there, I think I have that window up in the background here. Um, it says you're getting a 19% rental yield at the current price of it. But what you don't see is that's because the co-owner who brought it to the platform is paying the mortgage herself. She's not having the investors pay any portion of that. And she's providing a temporary rent credit. And actually, I think that that rent credit's done now. And so they do a lot of this sort of financial engineering that makes the deal look good, and maybe you're getting really strong returns. I mean, they almost always try to target this 20% return, actual, cash on cash type yield. Uh, but it's almost always an extremely fragile yield. Like if you bought this property outright, you're not getting a 20% cash on cash return. And so it's only happening from these little tricks that they do basically. And I say tricks, I mean, I don't know what to call it, like techniques that they're using, but everybody or anybody who really digs into it understands there's no way for that to continue as it is. And so almost all of these, they do it for a short period of time so they can sell out their equity at a what in my mind is a very inflated price. A lot of times it is relatively close to the appraisal, but as a real estate investor, 90% or probably 95% of properties you can't pay the appraised value for it and have it be a good deal, right? Like
yeah.
it either just has to be a unicorn property that the numbers work perfect at the appraised value, or you have to get it at some kind of discount. Most of these properties on Lofty you're actually paying a premium, but they're using these little financial hacks basically to make it look really strong on the front end. Um, and some of those will continue that way for a long time, like the mortgage being paid outside of the LLC structure. Some of them, the plan is to do that forever. But what we're starting to see over time is co-owners realize, like, oh, that's not a very good deal for me. I think anybody with a little bit of real estate experience would sort of pick up on that earlier. But that is just not who they are targeting. That's not who their typical. The average user gets to this platform because they know about the Algorand blockchain and crypto, which is what powers this, and they're used to investing on meme coins. I mean, I honestly believe that's who most of the people, at least a lot of the early adopters on here were, because they were just trash properties in bad markets. Um, but because of that, and because so many of them have tanked, now what I do is I buy very few of the ones that are new to the platform. I dig through, because the tokens that you buy that are equal a piece of ownership, you continue to trade them forever. And so I'll buy these at $15 or $20 per token, where par value, the value they were originally bought to the platform, it was $50. And so usually that $50 par value is very close to the real world appraised value if it's still in good condition. Um, but because the property wasn't ever very suitable to be a real estate investment, it's just not going to spit out good cash flow, or for whatever reason, the tokens aren't performing well, so people aren't getting paid, and so they sell them for very cheap. And so I mean that's where the real opportunity is you're buying at a big discount to the real world value of the asset, but often not getting the income that you were expecting up front. And so for me, I'm doing that and then pushing to sell these in the real world, which is an option.
So you have a vote then to or a voice in order to sell the property or keep the
Yes.
property.
So you get so these are they're all set up as what they call them DAOs. It's a decentralized autonomous organization. And that's sort of the setup so that these aren't stocks, right? They're not a security. It's we all own a piece of this and we all get to vote on what happens. I'm not just stuck along for the ride. Now my voting share might be tiny, but if I can put together a proposal and send it out to all the other owners, I've found that in most cases it's relatively easy to get them to come on board with something if it makes sense, right? And so probably 5 or 6 times at this point, I've accumulated a number of tokens in a property that were trading really, really cheaply. And it's because that property hadn't paid out any income in a very long time because it accumulated some CapEx expenses that ended up having debt. And so, it just isn't, the token isn't paying anything. And so you could buy them at like 15 or $20 per token and then sent out a proposal to the other owners in the asset and said, hey, why don't we just list this for sale and sell it in real life?
Hmm.
And several times now, the net sale has, after all fees and paying back the debt, been in the mid $30 per token. So if you were one of the original buyers of that, you lost money. But anybody who bought in around where I did made a tremendous return in a short period of time. And so that's what's kept me on the platform is there's those opportunities. But by and large, the new properties coming to the site that are at the full $50 per token value, there's very few that I find. There's a few. I have a couple, and there are some that are just like, the person running it does a great job. The person who brought it to the platform had a good business plan for it. So they exist, but there's just not very many of them. And they almost all, uh, if they're paying out a strong yield, it's because the owner's paying the mortgage payment outside of the structure. And so, and that sounds great, right? And it is great as long as it works. But as soon as that stops being a good deal for that owner, they can't pay it for some reason. We've already seen this on the platform where we've had some co-owners that brought the property to the platform. They had agreed to pay the mortgage. They sold their equity out at a high price. And then they're like, oh, I can't pay that mortgage. So then, if the Dow has to cover the mortgage itself, all of a sudden now there's no cash flow.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm just trying to wrap my head around everything you just said.
Yeah, it's a complex setup, and it's why it's such a trap for people who aren't really just living in the site and like understanding what's going on.
So is it better off to like if you're just getting started to like go ahead and make the account and then just be a fly on the wall for a while and just maybe somehow like I'm not familiar with it, but just write down certain ones that you're interested in and
Yep.
why, and then watch what happens with them.
Yeah, and so that I mean, for me, when I first got on, and I videoed from the very beginning. At first, I thought, oh, I'm gonna take 10,000 bucks, I'm gonna find 10, and I'm gonna put 1,000 in each. This was just a random number. It's not, it was. I would, if I were someone new getting on this, I'd pick a number where you feel like it's not going to hurt you at all if you lose it all. And the great thing is you can buy a $15 or $20 token, right? You can invest very small amounts of money on here. Um, and I would look at every single one, look at them like you have to own one token to enter Lofty's Discord. So you have to
Mhm.
be, so find one that you want to buy, spend the minimum, maybe get a cheap one, but do due diligence on it just like you were buying the whole property, right? Look at the appraisal, read all the documents, look at all the third-party websites you can as far as checking zoning, look up in the public records and make sure the entity that they say owns it actually owns it. There's at least three or four now on the platform that's not the case, that the deed gets moved and somehow that was missed. Um, it appears to be that it was fraud, but I mean, it's yet to be determined what exactly happened. Um, but so I would do that, and as soon as you own one token, then you can jump into Lofty's Discord, and they have a channel set up for every single property. And so you can see people in there daily talking about different properties. I would start off with properties that have no debt because the structure is easier, right? You don't run into this situation where they're doing something weird with the mortgage. Um, I would my goal was to find ones that are a significant discount to the real world value of the property. So I look up the address, I look it up on Zillow, I look it up on homes.com, on Redfin, anywhere that I can pull comps. If it's somewhere in Texas, I probably have, well, a lot of the major cities I have MLS access for, so I look at that. Although Lofty doesn't have a ton of those. I guess those are mostly mobile. But I would whatever way you can to try to determine what the real world value is, and then compare that to what is the token price on this, and you take the current token price, multiply it by all the outstanding tokens, and then you look at what your discount is. You also have to consider they have very high transaction fees, so you have to add that into your calculation. But yeah, that's what I would just get a couple first, right? My goal was to get 10 at first. I own pieces of around 30 right now on Lofty. Um, one of the things is I like to identify properties that I think are close to being a good deal, and then you can set up alerts so that whenever the price drops a certain amount, you can go in and buy those tokens. And so that's one of the things that I'm often buying just a couple tokens at a time because somebody listed cheap tokens. And yeah, I mean, I would start that way, get into their Discord, talk to people. I'm in there on a daily basis talking to people about different properties. Um, me, I honestly, I have way too much time on my hands. My team pretty close to runs itself as far as my day job. I'm a real estate agent. I have a small team that works for me. So, in general, I spend a lot of time on here, but it's because I think, so I've been investing for a long time and I really see the benefits of this going into the future. I'm quasi disabled. I have a very hard time getting around at this point. And so, moving to a more passive vehicle has been my goal. I had switched from mostly owning properties to mostly owning, to selling properties and holding the paper. So I was already transitioned to being more of a debt investor, which is a lot more passive. But that's what I'm really excited about this, all these fractional sites because I mean, it's couch money, right? You never get off the couch. You can do all your due diligence online, and I never even have to talk to anybody, right? Like you don't have to call people. Yeah, it's all just all out there. And sometimes I do though. Like we had one of these properties um, that I had been buying tokens in really cheap, and it seemed like there was, we had it listed. It was vacant and listed. I think that one was listed for sale. It was one that they were trying to sell. And we weren't getting much info from the listing agent. So I called and asked another agent, hey, would you go check out this property? And it turned out, he went and took a video and it was in terrible shape relative to what the original listing agent was telling us. And I think that the first agent maybe had never even been in it. I don't know. But so, you can start to do stuff like that. And that made us switched agents. And now we've got a bunch of offers on it. But I mean, it can be something that you can be an extreme introvert, never have to talk to anybody. You can be disabled, never have to walk into a property. And as long as you're doing the work, you can really make good returns.
Yeah, I've seen some of the deals that you've done. I mean, obviously for someone starting out, I wouldn't expect to, you know, match those, but it'd be good, like you said, to get like one or two, just get my feet wet and
Hmm.
slowly move forward. Um, Another question I had was, so like one of the reasons why I was looking at this is because it's a way that I was hoping to get extra income to try and buy more rentals. Is this a
Hmm.
feasible revenue of doing that, or I'm not saying like in a year. I'm talking like
Right.
if like 5, 10 years, is it possible to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so one on Lofty, I think that you can make really outsized returns by being sort of a somewhat active trader, like buying into these, really looking for the discounted tokens, selling when they pop, or pushing to sell them in real. Like I call it token flips because there's not really a name for it yet, but like buying the tokens cheap, getting them to sell the property in the real world. I think that's been my highest ROI. And I don't know which ones you've seen, but I mean I've had some where it's been a 45 or 50% ROI in 3 months. So if you annualize it, if you can keep doing it, I mean you can make really good returns on starting from a relatively small amount of money. Like at the moment, I have around $50,000 on Lofty if you put like 500,000, you wouldn't make great returns because it's too, there's not that many discounted tokens. So you'd end up buying up stuff that aren't as great of a discount at, each time. Or as you sell, you'd be selling too many at a time if you're selling tokens. So I think it's a great way to do some sort of active trading, and sort of, mid-term money. Like your money gets locked up until that property sells, or you've done something to make the tokens worth more, or just maybe it's just time. Um, but if I thought I were going to, I actually think that Mogul is a good platform if I have a really longer term view, right? Like if I were a real young person, I wanted to get into real estate investing. I had really no down payment saved, right? Most of their holds, they're looking at, they model it as a 10-year hold. Uh, but I think that, depending on what the market looks like, they could sell it sooner if it looked good to do so. And so, that's a platform where I feel a lot safer, telling people about where you're sort of investing alongside some guys that really know what they're doing. They're picking markets that I'm much more excited about as far as just more growing markets. They're picking properties that I think make a lot more sense. And so if I want, especially like if I were someone who was, real young person, maybe in college, but I wanted to start investing a little bit, like a platform like that, I think would be amazing to start putting some money away. You do get income every month from that. You get your rental yield all the time, but you're not going to get like the lump sum from a payout until that property sells. Um, but so if I had a longer term view and I wanted to learn a whole lot about real estate investing, and get paid for it along the way, that's one of the things that I think is an amazing opportunity for new people to real estate, right? If you've never bought anything in your life, or maybe you bought the home you live in and that's it, but now I've saved up, 25, $50,000 and I'm going to go buy another rental property. Okay, well, I could do that and go buy one rental property, or I could put $1,000 into 50 different properties and have the experience of, and now it's not the same experience because I'm not doing it all alone, but I get to experiment with different markets. I get to experiment with different strategies. Um, you know, Learn from the other investors that are in the deals with me. So I just see it as a way to learn a tremendous amount of lessons over a short period of time because you have the ability to invest in so many more deals. Um, and so you're diversifying your risk a little bit, and you're also um, but you're taking on new risks, right? There's the platform risk, there's risk of you don't have the control over the property. But so I think for some people, that are really early and maybe they don't even have enough saved up to buy their first property. I think it'd be a really interesting way to sort of start building experience and creating some sources of income at the same time.
Mhm. In case you're wondering, I was drinking Perrier out of a wine glass.
Oh yeah, I didn't even notice.
I sometimes like to point out on camera just because people, you know how YouTube is now. They see you with something that look like might be an alcoholic beverage and want to try and make it out to be like you're a horrible person.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
But it's Perrier in a wine glass.
it's funny.
But yeah, so yeah, kind of what I was thinking is I'd like to build something up like that because especially since like trying to do like more side hustles, like I'm thinking about doing like getting my real estate license. I'm thinking about
Yep.
doing more or like a little bit more handyman business. But I have a lot of the equipment, I have the trucks to do it and stuff, and even like the small lawn care business, and just taking the profits of like my cut of that. And as long as I don't necessarily need the money, just shove all that into like something else that can make money.
Right.
And is it?
Oh, go ahead.
I'll say it with like Lofty and Mogul and buying tokens and stuff. Is that something you can do kind of like what the one rental at a time group does, where you can more or less look it over in like 10, 15 minutes every day?
Yeah, I mean, so Both of them have, yeah, you could spend even less time than that because, Lofty's entire platform has less than 200 properties on it.
Hmm.
Mogul's entire platform is probably only 25 or something. I don't know. I own 11 of those. So they're not putting out, it's not like there's tons of properties every day. Um, but each time a property comes out, I spend a good, a lot of time on it. So you could break that up over the week because it's not like it comes up and sells out instantly, right? So like if the next time Mogul put a property out, one, if you jump in either one of their clubs on the Mogul platform or like in my Discord, we always have links to the properties, a day or two early. We get these like VIP launch links so you can see them a little early, so you don't have to worry about them selling out because a lot of their deals sell out. But yeah, you could take 20 minutes a day over the course of a week and then decide, hey, is this one I'm going to put money in or not? Because they probably put out two or three new properties a month on Mogul, and Lofty's really weird. Like sometimes they won't have any for weeks, and then sometimes they'll put out, 5 or 10 properties over a couple of weeks. So, but especially because Lofty, you can always go back and buy tokens later. So like Mogul, once it's sold out, there's no way to get any more of them. But on Lofty, you can go back and buy them later. I mean, you can really take your time with it. If you have a couple hours on a weekend, you could, look at a whole bunch of them, or if you only wanted to look a little bit every day, you could do that as well. Um, it's certainly not something that you need to spend a ton of time with the way that I am. I'm really trying to learn as much as I can about all the platforms because I think that eventually I'll move a, a a large chunk of my net worth onto some of them, and I don't know which ones yet, right? So trying to really understand how they all work, where the traps are and whatnot. But yeah, absolutely, you could do it in a very limited amount of time. And depending on which platform, it might be, starting off at 25 bucks or 250 bucks is the minimum on Mogul, but it's very approachable.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I was listening. I was just taking down notes too. So,
I know it's you mostly wanted to talk about the short or the fractional stuff, but you mentioned thinking about getting your license, and whenever somebody's into real estate investing and also thinking about getting their real estate license, like you should just do it. I've had my license since 2005, but I've only done real estate sales as a main job since like 2018. I always did it as something on the side, and now
mhm.
the agents on my team, a lot of I only have 4 agents on my team. Two of them do it part time. And I've had agents in the past that, their day job, they might work in property management or something and make, whatever they make, 30, 40, $50,000 a year, which is a perfectly fine salary here, but actually make significantly more with the property sales they do on the weekends and evenings, and then transition to be full-time agents. Like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like especially if you're already into investment properties and you're looking at deals yourself, it's a
Mhm.
it's a real no-brainer to just get your license.
Yeah, because I was even thinking about taking it a step further with doing because eventually I'd like to get more into the flipping side of stuff too. But
Hmm.
I would like to actually do like a partnership with different people.
Yep.
And what I would like to do is just bring all the like because the handyman business, bring the labor, the construction, all that, and do all that, and then have someone else hold the deed, or have an LLC hold the deed, obviously, and then because my biggest thing is with me holding the or being the agent and stuff, I don't want the person that sold the property to come back and be like, well, you sold it for this and it was only 6 months later. Yeah, but it needed 80K worth of work
Hmm.
to get it to 3 times what you sold it for.
Right. Yeah, and that's actually one more opportunity on Lofty is so there I told you there's all these trash properties on there, right, that are selling for super cheap. If I were in Cleveland or Akron or St. Louis, Missouri, is it St. Louis? Yeah. There's a couple of markets where there are just a bunch of non-performing properties on this platform. And if I were in any of those markets and I were interested in flipping, I would be finding those deals, researching them on Lofty, and then contacting. the entities and saying, "Hey, I'll buy that from you." Because a lot of them are just sitting there stuck. They don't have the money to fix them up to re-tenant. Um, they don't really have any plan. Some of them are now starting to get listed and sold where we're just holding the mortgage and it's selling with owner financing. But if I were in any of those markets, I'd be like really actively pursuing them as a way to make money as a real estate investor on the other end, buying from them versus, versus investing on the platforms in them.
Hmm. Yeah, that was my next question. If you could reach out and buy stuff from people, or if anyone's done that.
So I don't know of anybody that has intentionally targeted them and bought them. I mean, we've listed a bunch for sale, and I think that I mean, there's ones that are in certain markets that I think like if I were in that market, I would just do it. Like, because I think that um, I think that there's a lot of times there's investors that are just think all their money has disappeared, right? They think that that token's worthless. And if you came and you said, "Hey," there's a couple of different things, right? Like if you were somebody who was going to flip and you said, "Hey, I'm going to buy it from you. I'm going to pay a little bit extra, but you're going to owner finance it to me. I'm going to put, I'm going to cover closing costs and that's it. And then 6 months from now, when I fix it up and sell it, that's when you're getting the rest of the money." There's definitely properties on the platform where people would take that deal, right? So if you wanted to get into, flipping some of them where you had where basically your whole expense was the cost of the rehab versus the property itself. I think there's opportunities there. They just don't have any good ones, and they don't have any in my market. And this is one of the things they're very clearly not. The people who made Lofty know as close to nothing about real estate investing as you could imagine, and have them build a platform about real estate investing. Sometimes, and I don't mean that to be mean. I mean, they're very smart tech guys, so they have made some what I think are just very like novice errors about surrounding real estate, and part of that is most of the properties on their platform they bought were put on there from like these turnkey rental providers, and so there was some people that just really realized like, oh, these guys have no idea what they're doing. Let me just dump a bunch of trash properties onto their platform, and so that's how a lot of them originally got on there. Um, I don't remember why I wanted to tell you about that, but but because of the markets, right? I mean, so like if you look at the markets, they're all places where if you have like really solid real estate investors that are know what they're doing, they're not most of them are not going to choose those markets as their first place that they're thinking of investing, right? I mean, there a lot of them are in places that have, and this is Lofty in particular, not all of them, right? Like Mogul is doing a much better job of picking markets in my opinion, and those aren't the only two sites; those are just my two favorite. But yeah, like I mean, Lofty's got a bunch of stuff in markets that have like 15% occupancy rate or vacancy rates, like so it's really hard to make money with a 15% vacancy rate in your market, and like if you're not local and good at managing and like if it's a hands-off thing where you're counting on a institutional third-party PM, like I mean that's why there's the opportunity to buy those cheap is because uh they're just deals that just should never have been sold on the platform.
Okay.
I know it's like when I describe it, it's like such a mess. Like, why would I be on here, right? Like it is, it's completely, looking for diamonds in the rough, finding those deals, like, because it is. I mean, you can't just, for example, there were people early on the platform who were like, oh, I'll just buy a token in every property. I'm going to get diversification. And those people, more than two-thirds of every token that's ever been sold, has had like I think I want to say a 40% decline in value at some point. So, it was a big money losing endeavor to just like blindly buy everything on there. But at the same time, that loss that other people have taken is where the opportunity is because of the discount because all of the tokens are backed by a real world asset, and a lot of the investors ignore that fact.
Hmm. Okay.
Have I made you want to do this more or less?
I don't think it sounds as like you've clarified a lot of things, and it doesn't sound as complicated as I thought it was going to be. Especially when you said there's only like 200 properties on Lofty.
Right,
It's like you don't have to try and do all of them in a hit, but you could do like maybe across a weekend, 10 a day.
right. You could pick one market at a time. Look, you figure out which market you think is most attractive. Once you get onto the Lofties Discord, you can see like they're grouped as who the manager is of those properties. And so you can kind of get a feel for who do I like as a manager. And it's not the property manager. We actually have like this sort of weird position where they're managing the property manager, but the LLC has hired somebody to do that function, to sort of be like a little bit more hands-on to manage a manager. And so, you might figure out like, I mean, there's three that, there's Earl, there's Alec, and then there's Josh. And between those three, they're managing probably more than 50% of the properties on the platform would be my guess, but maybe even a little bit more than that. And so like you might find like, oh, I really like Alec or Earl or Josh, whoever it is, and be like, let me dig through each one of their properties. Now, a lot of those properties, they just recently took over from some of these much worse managers. So it's not as if, oh, just because they put out one good one, all of theirs are going to be good. Like, no, they're going to be issues. But like for me, like I really like, because I like to dig into every single detail. I'm a big fan of Earl. He runs a bunch of them. He's brought several of his own properties to that platform, and he will give you almost too much detail about everything, right? Like you'll see the bank statements, you'll see every mortgage statement, you'll see every single expense on that property. You'll understand where it's coming from, and he'll put things to a vote that I think some of the other managers would think they just get to make that decision. Like it might be a pretty small decision, but he's like, "Hey, we're going to vote on all this stuff because we own this together." Versus, we've had in the past some managers who just wanted to treat it like their property. For the most part, that's done. But yeah, you could, so that would be one way to chunk it into, okay, I'm just going to look at all the ones from this guy, or I'm going to just look at all these ones geographically, or maybe I just want to look at all the short-term rentals first, or all of the long-term rentals, or if you looked at all the multifamily, that would, there's only like probably I don't know how many there are, but it's a much smaller number. There's a lot of duplexes, fourplexes, not much bigger, but there's like a 32 unit one on there right now. Um, Definitely do your due diligence on that one if you're interested in it. Watch the news stories that are about it. I mean, that's what makes this a lot of fun is that there's so many properties on the site that you should just never invest in. And then there's ones that are just fantastic and it's really hit or miss. And by actually doing the work, you're going to make a much bigger return than if you're just blindly just buying stuff because I see, oh, this one says it's 20%, let me get that.
Now, is the Discord group like a fairly big group? Like, is there pretty much everyone local to each market, more or less, or is it not quite that big?
Lofty's Discord is so anybody who signs up on Lofty, once you've bought one token, you can join their Discord and they have a link in the lower left. And uh they have it all separated into channels. Every single property has its separate channel. But you can go, once you've invested in one token, you can look at every single property channel if you want to. So and it helps you do due diligence because you can see what they're talking about, see different plans they've had. But I mean, I think, I mean, I don't know how many are actually in their Discord, but I would guess it's a ridiculously large number. Now, if you join mine, there are only 80 or 90 people in there right now. We just talk about like all the different platforms. I actually set it up because Lofty's Discord, if you go in there and ask questions as a beginner, you got like just a whole bunch of people that are going to jump on you and make you feel stupid. Um, I think that it gets, you have some like raving fans and you get some like just trolls. And so, I think that a ton of lurkers, and there's probably 20 of us that actually go in there and talk regularly on Lofties. Um, and so in some of the property channels, it might be, some people that just own a lot of one property or something. Maybe they're just active in one channel or another. But I think like if you pick out properties that you think you're interested in and you just monitor those discords regularly, you'll learn a ton of stuff about what's going on. Maybe there's an eviction, maybe there's some big repair coming up that we're voting on how to handle. Um, there's an unlimited amount of information that you can find on any of the properties, depending on who is the manager. You might get more or less. You might have to push a little harder to get certain info. But yeah, it is. I don't know. For me, it's a lot of fun being in there and like just finding out. I dig into a new property every day and just try to figure out like, hey, is there something to this? Can I make some money on it? And then even though I've only been on there for like 9 or 10 months, there's ones that I looked at, that far back and were not a deal, but today the token's $10 cheaper, and now I have to take a much harder look at it.
All right, cool. Um, I you've kind of explained things very well and give me a lot more to think about. And I don't think I really have any more questions at this time. So I'd like to thank you again for coming on and talking about all this.
Yeah, I'm real happy to. Obviously you can tell I just love talking real estate in general. I've been one of the reasons I think I spend so much time on this stuff is because I've always just wanted to tell everybody I know, hey, you should invest in real estate and this is what you should do. And like now I've got this group of people that are all doing it regularly. It's also why I joined the school community. Like I'm really at a point where, you know, it, they definitely have more to learn, but I don't, I could not ever learn anything new about real estate again, and I'm going to be fine, right? I'm more just trying to move my investments to more passive and, getting to a more and more passive state. But I jumped in there because I think it's going to be a lot of fun to talk to other people. I love helping people that are like starting out in it and whatnot. And so I think that's why I really like the fractional stuff because I would talk as a agent, I would talk to, because my team only works with investors. I don't think I mentioned that, right? So we don't help people that try to buy a home to live in. The only people we work with is investors. And I mean, sometimes house hackers, so they're going to live in it. But like our goal, it's always a numbers driven decision. And so probably for every 100 wannabe investor that I talk to, one actually moves forward and buys a deal in real life. Well, now, if I've talked to somebody for a while and they just won't pull the trigger, I can say, "Hey, did you know you can buy $1,000 worth of a deal right now and see how that feels, right?" Because some people just are never going to pull the trigger when it's a $50,000 down payment, but they might, just start experimenting. So, yeah. Sorry, I know we were wrapping it up, and I started. I mean, I do. I love talking about real estate investing in general. This stuff I think is the most interesting thing happening in the field. So, anytime you want to talk about it, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll talk longer than you're willing to listen, I'm sure.
And if you haven't already, make sure you go out to Financial Firefighter and watch last Friday's episode, which you're going to be on, and make sure you catch up with Joe over there.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, anytime. And until next time, this was Jack's Business Talk.